Hello everybody, it's the Alco Diesel Guy, and I've got a review for you, and yes, it is a Rapido RS11. Little background here, I wanted to kind of redo my review of the RS11 that I did previously from Rapido, because, let's face it, I kind of muttered my way through there because, to be honest, I wanted to take that engine and throw it against a wall.
The basic issue being is that it found every possible chance to derail on my layout. And this included my straight sections, not to mention 22-inch, and again I say 22-inch curves, which, yes, for the millionth time, I did check. It was not a track problem, it was clearly a locomotive problem.
And I began to wonder, as I struggled with that engine so much, maybe the issue was with that particular model because, again, as I noted in that review, I also had a green Alco RS11 from the same sort of run, but with the original demo paint scheme and with slightly different details, and that one stayed on the tracks. So I'm surmising the problem with that engine was, on that particular run where all these New Haven units were built, because those were also the units, I should mention, that were commented on as having this problem, that whatever issue happened during production happened with that particular run of engines, those particular New Haven painted engines. This one here is a very similar engine. This one is actually what those engines wound up becoming. This is a Penn Central RS11X New Haven, which is literally what it is, and this is number 7661, pardon me, and it's also equipped with factory sound, so I will not have to go through the extremely agonizing, life-shortening disassembly process. It's all set to go, provided it stays on the track. I have also done a companion video, which is either going to be up or be posted soon, where I actually did one more of these procedures, and I've come to the conclusion that these early first-gen units basically are not worth putting a decoder into, as I had a lot of issues with that yet again, and there's another issue that came up that is simply not recoverable from, which I'll get more into later on in this video when we see that engine, as I'm going to be testing it alongside this one, which I admittedly have run a little bit since I did the work because I was curious as to how well it would work. But anywho, let's get into this model right now. Rapido's packaging, as usual, is very high quality. Ugh, that's in there good and tight. And here we are. We are greeted with the operating manual. For those of you not familiar with Rapido, they do this, and this manual has a bunch of laughs in it. It is very comprehensive. It's also very comical. So depending on your sense of humor, you may or may not like it. There's also a comprehensive listing on the... and here we have subscription form exploded diagram of all the parts that go into this unit. Again, this is the complicated disassembly procedure. I hope that I do not have to ever disassemble this thing, though Rapido does offer a very comprehensive warranty, and incidentally, in case anyone's wondering, yes, I finally did get my units, my 3 New Haven units, locomotives, RS11s I should say, sent back to Rapido. The Penn Central kind of leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. Feel free to watch my Guilford merger video, because that goes through what the Penn Central was, and was sort of the definition of a bad railroad during the 70s and in general. The company basically was an amalgamation that was failed from the start. And again, that video will explain a lot of what happened, so I recommend watching it. The main infamous thing was the Brunswick green paint scheme, which usually shows up as black. As we can see here, this engine actually seems more black than anything else. A lot of people get this wrong, and I wouldn't be surprised if Rapido did, because this paint scheme, because the Penn Central was in such dire shape, tended to turn black over time, and it was hard to tell the difference when it was in better shape because of how badly and how low the maintenance was, because the company had no money to advance into the maintenance of its equipment. Anyway, enough of that rant. Let's go on and see what we have in here. Here I have the window shades. It appears, and stack extension, it looks like, right over here. That's a nice little detail. I didn't see that in my other model. I have to see how that goes in. I think that's to extend the exhaust stack on the rear of the engine to make it more prominent. I'm going to zoom you guys in a bit more from this point on so you can see a little bit better. Over here we have the engine itself. I'm going to pull it out of the actual box and put this to the side. That's essentially all there is in the box, except this very thick foam padding which surrounds it, and the other piece of foam that I pulled out. Very well packed unit. Again, Rapido continues to do it the more traditional way in terms of packing their engines, I should say, whereas Atlas has gone to the sort of more modern and sort of aggressive but sort of required approach, especially if you want to avoid having to have the end user apply detail parts and have them break on the end user, etc. And that is, in Atlas's case, to screw the actual locomotive down to a plastic mount, which they actually call a display case. They actually call their boxes display cases, and allow that to hold it in place and secure it during shipment. And it does work very well, I have to say. But this is the old school approach. Enough rambling. Let me go through this. To get the engine out, we have to first pull this cocoon apart. This outer plastic comes off. Can't speak today. Comes off. Then we have the cocoon itself. Just put that to the side there. To get into it, we pull this little flap back, and this whole assembly will come out. And there it is. Again, what happened with the Penn Central Railroad is they acquired the New Haven Railroad as required by the ICC when they went and purchased or rather, I should say, merged with the New York Central Railroad, which, of course, the Pennsylvania Railroad merging with them to cause the Penn Central to exist. And anyway, they acquired the New Haven as part of that deal, so all of these got sucked into their roster, which is why this engine has Penn Central paint on it, not New Haven paint anymore because it was absorbed into the company. And let's see what we have here. I see something a little troubling already. There is a horn missing here. That's a little troubling. As you see, there's one almost Hancock horn. Oh, here we go. So I already have a problem, and that is not a good start for this particular engine. Taking a look at the unit very carefully, we see it is typical Rapido, very nicely detailed. We have the usual irons. These are the fully, supposedly, always straight, or whatever they call them, grab irons, railings. Sorry, but, pardon me, I am actually congested a little bit. These railings, as we look very carefully, are in fact slightly bent. I find that's a common problem with this engine. No matter how well they're packed or treated, they will always bend. Even if you don't have to, in this case of this being a DCC and sound equipped unit, even if you don't have to equip it with a decoder, they will always show up bent. These are bent back a little bit toward the shell. These over here are bent a little bit forward. I am going to nitpick here only because, again, Rapido boasts about how this is always done right. One of the nice details is that these railings are the proper type with this unusual stanchion right here. This is a detail that the New Haven Railroad only had. Again, this unit was a former New Haven engine, but became part of Penn Central when that company took over the New Haven Railroad as part of the deal for them to become the Penn Central, merging with the New York Central Railroad. The ICC demanded they take control of that railroad and basically keep it going. The New Haven Railroad at the time was just losing money hand over foot because it basically ran commuter traffic, which, again, as I mentioned in my video, and please feel free to check this out, on the Northeastern Railroading and the Guilford merger. Essentially, the ICC demanded these railroads run these commuter services at a deficit so they could maintain minimal pricing and keep them affordable for people commuting to work every day. The end result, any of these commuter lines basically caused the company to lose money, and the companies had no choice but to run it because the government required it. So it was, again, the ICC being very aggressive and constantly thinking it had to put railroads in their place and causing a lot of problems. I'll try to not to get too political, but it was a real mess back in those days. Continuing on, again, the New Haven Railroad being mixed traffic. We see it has the steam generator intake, the steam generator exhaust, and the other utilities on the top here for it. We see it has the one Hancock air whistle type horn, which these units had. They sounded like steam engines running. Not sure what the deal with that was. I think that was to keep them quiet for urban areas. And we also see, unfortunately, that the horn for this side is broken off. And that is literally how I got it, as you saw earlier. Here it is again. I'm going to have to glue that back on. Not sure exactly what happened there, but apparently someone either wasn't careful packing this up or it got damaged. Again, I find it's pretty typical to get one of these engines, as I discovered with my New Haven engines, with parts broken off in transit. More oil is unfortunately splattered all over the place here. The vents are very nice. Here's one of the fans. Here's the fan on the top. We have the grab irons on the front, all in their proper places. Really nice details. As I mentioned before I go to the back, the brake wheels in place. Nice little faux chain here, although that is part of the plastic. It's kind of melted, again, made part of the plastic, molded on. There's, again, a piece of paint missing right over here. I keep seeing it. Actually, no, it's a shadow. I thought that was a piece of paint chip, but it's not. We have these air hoses here, which are an interesting detail because you really can't bend them, and they appear because of how unflexible they are. I've heard people try to adjust these and have them break off, so I'm not going to touch them. But the fact is they're so unflexible and they look so much like they're part of the plastic, I'm not sure why Rapido even bothered making them separately apply. They could have just molded them in and achieved the same effect. Now going on to the other side, same deal here. Again, this is the side with the horn on it. Again, we have the proper sanctions for the New Haven type engines, including the one on the back here. paper air vents are in place. It has the extra set of vents on the top here because this is a later production model. Note the earlier ones only had 3 vents up here. These later model RS3s, I think these were phase 3s, had the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the top here. 5. Over here we have the radiator duct. Yeah, definitely very nicely detailed. As we get around to the back, we find again we have the 2 ladders going up to the sand hatches with the grab irons in place, the number boards, and the top grab irons right there. We also note underneath it, at this point, looking on the opposite side as well, the stanchions, and we have this pipe going through. This is an interesting detail because this is what carries the steam generator heat through. Again, the steam generator generates steam and it's pushed through this pipe. It goes around here through this little attachment right through here, and then out through this hose, which then links up to the coach and supplies the steam to the actual passenger cars. And that's how you get your heat. Okay, so let's fix what should need to be fixed. Although Rapido in their instructions constantly points out might need to be fixed. I've got to fix this horn. I would normally punch this little piece out, but because of the fact it is actually part of this, as we can see, and it is actually physically broken off this horn itself, which is actually a Hancock air whistle, I may as well leave it in place because there won't be any place for it to sit down in any way if I were to knock that piece out, because there's no hole. There's no peg left, I should say, to go into the hole. It's just, yeah, there. I think I got rid of that now, so I'm going to now gently take this and put this right over the hole. Oh, I hate it when it's like this. Ugh. Freaking cheap glue. Ugh. For God's sake. Oh, now it went on the locomotive. Oh, come on. Piece of garbage. Freaking crappy details. Okay, that's now sort of in. So I guess that'll just have to do. And now let's go through some basic functions of this unit, starting in order. For some reason, the number boards I can't get to turn off. I've tried a few times now. We'll start with function number 1, which is the bell. That's the stock bell. Function 2 is the horn. Again, that's a standard horn that comes with. Function 3 is supposed to be the coupler clank. That doesn't seem to work at all. Oh, there it goes. Function 4 is, I believe that's supposed to actually be a light accessory on the front here. Hold on one second here. Am I in the forward mode or backward? There it is. Function 4 is, I think that's supposed to be the classification lights, but that's not apparently working right now. Function 5 is the crossing sequence. Horn sequence for a crossing below. Nice sound effects there. Function 6 is the cab light, the actual cab light. That's one of the crazy features this unit has. If we look inside very carefully, this is one of Rapido's crazy functions. I don't know how well this will show up here. Oh, pardon me. But if we go right inside the cab, as we see now that I've pressed function 5, function 6, the cab is now illuminated, and I can also turn that off by pressing it again. That's another one of the crazy features this engine is equipped with. Nice little touch by Rapido. Function 7 is the dimmer for the headlight. Function 8 is the startup sequence. Again, that's Rapido's own sort of proprietary sound effect they physically captured from an actual operating RS 11. Actually, no, pardon me. It was actually an Alco FPA 4 up in the New York and Lake Erie, if I remember correctly. F8 again will shut the engine down. Function 11 is the classification lights. So you see here we have the green, we have the clear light. Press it again, it goes off. Press it again, it goes green. Press it again, it goes off. There's no red function for some reason on that. Function 12 is a dimmer again. So it looks like there are two dimmers on this thing. And that goes through the basic features of this particular locomotive. Okay, I now have the Penn Central RS11 sitting on the tracks. That horn has now been glued back into place. It's still holding on. Hopefully it will stay like that. I'm going to go fire her up and take her for a cruise around the layout, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this thing will make it around and I won't start muttering out of my mind with issues with the train jumping the tracks like I did last time. Let's go ahead and fire this thing up. It sounds kind of weak on these. I gotta turn this up. I haven't programmed this legitly yet. I'm just doing a test to see if it'll actually work. See if she works. And to show how much I believe in this locomotive, I put it on the secondary track. The second to outer loop, because I don't want it to derail and go flying off my board. Accelerating up. Let's go to about 50% and give this thing a break and run. The default sounds on these things are very weak for some reason. So far, so good. A lot better than last time so far. Taking her up the mountain. That didn't sound good. It looks like it stayed on the track. No, it didn't. Oh, good grief. Here we go again. Oh. Yep. Said I would try. I think I said I would try to not mutter. Oh, God. Don't derail, don't derail, don't derail. And, of course, these things take forever to slow down because of the momentum programmed into them. Pardon that lack of camera work there, but I had to make sure it didn't fall off the track. I think I saved it, jumped back on the track. Let me take a look at it now. Yes, it's miraculously managed to jump back on the tracks. Let me keep it off the mountain. I'm not sure why that switch was thrown. Let me go back to Mainline. Switch the other switch here and put her back on the main. So, I've been running this for a while now, and I fixed a minor problem. There was a problem on the switch. I'll show it to you in a second as we get there. As the locomotive comes up the mountain, there was a problem on the crossover switch right where we're coming to now. The track wasn't properly aligned. I had to under-support it a little bit more, and doing that, as you see, it's not derailing anymore. And I've made several laps of this now, no derailments, nothing. I'm very happy with that. I'm almost disturbingly happy. Remember how much trouble I had with this. The idea that this is now working perfectly so easily is shocking, but it does kind of point out, it does kind of indicate that there was sort of a flaw with the new Haven painted engines. So it might be just the day of the factory work, maybe the employees hadn't been trained correctly yet, maybe they hadn't gotten enough experience yet, not bashing anyone specifically, just trying to come up with a reason as to why that happened. Whatever the case, right now, it looks really good. So I think I'm going to do next is I'm going to reverse the direction of the engine. I'll put it on the second track. In fact, let me put him back out on the second track and see how this guy handles that. Move this over to straight. I'll go through the opposite switch for the tracks there. Throw 1 and 2. 1, 2. Getting through the switches, no problems at all. Or the points, as it's also called. Let's actually bring it back here. I didn't need to put it on that one again. Pardon me, folks. I'm just going to reach out here and throw myself back over. Clear the train back onto the main line. We throw number 3 right now. Crossover 3 to prevent it from going to track 3. There's 3 here. There we go. That should now keep it on the main line. On the second main line. No, it went on again. I'm going to have to flip it back over. I haven't run these trains in a while, can you? Okay, so 3 again. Maybe the switch isn't working quite right. Oh, it is on. Oh, it did stay on the track. Okay. Actually, no, it didn't. I had to flip it back, so let's now put these tracks back at the proper direction. Let's go through these back again. So yeah, that's definitely a huge improvement there. No problems at all. Okay, gotta do a little maneuvering here. I just pulled the U-boat up ahead. That old U-18B there. One of my more recent little projects I did, I put a Keep Alive kit on this unit, which actually slipped right in place despite my previous attempts. With another engine that wound up getting wrecked. Anyway, let me back this into the siding so I can use the first track to test on as well. I honestly did not think this would work that well, which is why I didn't bother clearing it. But now apparently it's going to, so let's back her, put this engine away. Love the sound that engine makes. Pour her right into my siding here. Funny moaning noise this thing makes. Back her into the yard. Just get her out of the way. And then I can just test. That's actually my MOV train, or maintenance of way train. That tank car is actually a track cleaning car. Let's get now and stop it. Ooh, it derailed a little bit. I'll worry about that later. Shut it off. We'll clear this traffic over here. Okay, I'm going to back the train up. I'm going to then go through these switches over here. Put the train on the first outer loop and see if she handles that okay. If it does, I'm pretty good. I would be pretty much ready to say that this unit is in good shape, and the problem was just that those particular series of engines, because all 3 of my New Haven engines had that problem. Yet that green Alco demo unit that I put the decoder in, as many of you saw me squirm through that assembly, or stress through it, however you'd like to refer to it, didn't have any of these issues, so I'm starting to think that really was the issue. So my switches are aligned. Okay, let's go forward. Gently throttle her up. Take her to 14 to get through the tight switches here. Shouldn't be a problem. There we are onto the main. Nice and easy. That's good. We're all good. I hope. Oh, that really sick. I hate this piece of junk. It's working. There we go, onto the outer track. I'm going to gently accelerate to just below half. And we'll see how this thing deals with that. Hopefully I won't start muttering. So far, though, I'm very impressed. Yeah, look at that. No derailments. Perfect. Okay, that is shocking. So it appears the problem was just the locomotive itself and that batch of locos, because if you remember, I tried all 3 of those New Haven engines. I believe it was 3 of them, or at least 2 of them, and they all had the same problem with jumping the tracks. This engine, while it is technically a New Haven engine, it's the Penn Central variant, doesn't have the problems. It just works. As you can clearly tell, it is not my tracks. No upgrades on the outer loop were done since I tested that engine. As we see, there are no problems at all. It just runs. It's exactly what I expected of the first. It's too bad that one didn't work out. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. Now I think what I'm going to do is reverse the direction of the engine, physically turn it around, and try running it backwards to see if that does anything. And if it runs through that, I would have to say this thing is going to be a good runner for me. Okay, so I physically turned the engine around now to have it face a different direction. I'm going to go now and give this thing a run in this direction and see what that does. Then I'll take it on the inner track as well. Take it up the mountain in this direction and see what that does as well, and see if that makes any difference at all. So no changing direction on the other engine made a difference. Let's see if it makes a difference here. Let me zoom in on the back here. And this thing is so quiet, it doesn't make a lot of sound effects. And again, no problem so far. Looks really good. In more ways than one, and for a change. And that is just awesome. I'm very happy. Yep, running fine. No problems at all. I think what I'm going to do next is switch her onto the secondary track. Try her a few times there, then go up the mountain and see what that does. So I'm going to reverse directions on the engine now, just so I can go through the switches, because I need to get it in that direction to go up the mountain. So it's go and just change directions at this point. And now I'm going to go ahead and try to run her up the mountain. This is very impressive so far. I cannot believe this thing is working so well. This is, again, a very good thing. So I'm going to just engage the automatic direction reverse. The light should go out in the back now. It should go forward. There we go. Here we are forward again. I'm going to switch on. I'm going to run 1 or 2 times in this direction around. Then I'm going to go on the 3rd track and try it there. Then I'll bring her onto the mountain. And if she comes up and down the mountain safely, I know I've gotten an engine that works. And it was just a fluke with that particular unit. Or with those particular units, because it's plural, all the New Haven engines I had a problem with. Here we come again. No problems at all. Beautiful. Okay, let me get her onto the outer track, to the inner track again, the 3rd track. Throw my switch right here and see what she does there. So far, I just can't believe this is actually working that well, considering all the problems I had. So now it should switch and go onto the 3rd track. Come right through there. There we are on the 3rd track. Let me clear the 3rd track off again. Let me actually open the 2 switch tracks now. 1 and 2 for the mountain. Pardon my bad camera work there. I had to duck down to my control panel to make some switch changes. This should now take me onto the main line. Onto the mountain line, and we'll run her up there. And all should be well. No problems at all. So far, I'm very impressed compared to what I had before, definitely. I'm going to keep the speed just as it is. I don't think the speed had anything to do with it, because back then it was derailing at whatever speed I ran it at. There we are on the mountain division. On the branch, coming up. Around the tight bend, which starts with an 18-inch and then goes to 22 inches. Switching over, this is where it was derailing. No problem. Stayed right on the track. Through the town of Whitestone Mountain. And back onto the ladder, away from the cliffhanger. Running beautifully. Chugging away, turning again onto the secondary ladder, and then onto the descent track. Down the descent track. And back onto the secondary main, and over onto the 3rd main. So, with that, I think I can conclude that whatever the problem was had to do with the New Haven engines, which I'm thinking is what caused the varied issues with these particular engines. It's only certain runs of these engines. I know in this I would have ordered this rather boring and not an anything but flamboyant paint scheme on those engines as well. So that is a huge improvement. I'm very happy with that. It's too bad he couldn't do that from the start. Let me run one more time up the mountain. I think then I'll hook some coaches up to this and give it a real test. So I've been running this back and forth for several times now. No derailments. It's doing exactly what it should. One minor derailment on the top, but it hasn't happened since, so I'm assuming that was just a fluke. I'm going to now stop this engine, and I think I'm going to add my coaches to it and give it a try. In fact, I got some coaches sitting right here in Midville Yard. Let me go grab those. Let me go ahead now and throw that switch. Actually, first let me back up past the switch and then I can take care of that. Okay, let's reverse here. Go the other way through the switch because that's where my coaches happen to be stowed. This is a real test here. I'm actually on, and I didn't even realize this, I am on 16-inch curves right here. This is only rated for 18s over the rails here. I can't really fault it, but it looks like it's handling it quite nicely. I'm not going fast. I'm on step number 9 right now. Again, this has not been programmed or anything because I did not think it was going to work really at all. It's working very well. There are a lot of minor things, but I was able to correct most of them. But it's hooked in now, so let's just go forward. Let's ease it back now. I don't want to go that fast. No. Whoa. Go down to about step 9 again, because I know that was safe last time. There's a British manufacturer whose name escapes me right now that makes a lot of the curved switches and three-way switches I get. But they don't quite line up with this one, so if I ever have to change that, I'm going to have to probably redesign the whole tracks going into it. Let's go all the way through here, past the switch. And I'll back the set of cars out once I'm clear there. Put the brakes on, stopper. A little bit further forward just to be safe, and then stop right there. Okay, let me throw that switch now. Let's see what that is. 7. Back her out. And out we come. Oop, too fast. Let's go down to 10. Nothing much to see here. Got it back all the way into the rear. And they coast gently out of the yard. Beautiful. Cars on the track. You can see the engine stays on. It should. Then I'm going to go take this thing up the main line once on the trestle, and then I will declare that the unit is in good working order once I've completed that. See how well it passes this one. Pardon me, folks, I'm going to have to reach and throw the switch again. There we go. Throttle up now. Let's do about 37. Step 37, away we go. Turn the bell off because we're done switching in the yard. Again, these are just stock Lionel couplers on those, so they're not as scale. Lionel was never so much for scale reasons, they're more practical reasons. I'll probably change the rear coupler on these things, on this engine when I get to it, to make it more practical. Because again, I'm more interested in reliability than I am scale. We'll go here, coming up the hill. Let's slow up a little bit here. Let's go to 21. Sending. I have a feeling those coaches are going to come unhooked at that switch at the top there. That's where it usually happens. Going to merge now onto the main line, through the switches. This is where the locomotive itself came off. Looks good. Oh, it didn't even come disconnected. That's really good. So I may have fixed 2 problems with one stone. I killed 2 birds with one stone there. Let's make a stop here at the station. I guess I should. Put the brakes on, start slowing up. We can make a quick stop at Whitestone Station here. All aboard. Let's not go too fast now. We're from the cliffhanger, we're on the ladder right now. It is above the ground, but not very high, just a few feet, I suppose. Just about a half a foot rather than a few feet. Slow down a little bit more here. Oh, that's stopping. I don't want to stop. That's another area where it was derailing. It's through it too. The other engine was derailing. I'll show that to you in a little bit. And there we have it. It made it through. It just needs to get through the switch on the bottom now, and I can start messing with it. So I'm very impressed with that. So that should now switch to the third track. There it is. Onto the third track. Let's go to switch number 1. Let me change switch 2 back again. 2 back to the main. 2 has to be opened rather so it can accept the train. So I would definitely call that a success. While I had some minor issues, I'm pretty happy with that. That worked really well, especially compared to its New Haven counterparts. Okay, let's do a sort of a Sam's Train style running session. I've got my other more recently completed project here, this other more recently completed locomotive 2907, which is also a Rapido RS 11, which had its DCC sound decoder installed. Let me go ahead and give that a try. If you note, it's also holding another project behind it that should have been released by the time I put this video out. Let's go ahead and get this thing running here. See if I even have control of it. Again, as this doesn't have the Rapido sound effects, and as a result, I don't have all the effects working correctly on it, the lights, etc. I gotta reboot those wires. I haven't used that switch in so long. So let's get her out of there. Let's go back onto the main line here. I have to wait until he clears ahead of me and then I'll go into it. Again, that is that boxcar I rebuilt, which now has a Bachmann stock car underneath it, which I've modified to fit it. Very simple mod to do. I appreciate having such unusual rolling stock on my layout like this. Let me slow it up right here and throw switch number 1. Actually, number 2. Let's get him on past the switch quickly here. Put him on the third track. And throw 2 back again. And there he is on the third track. Now again, I have to get that coach up there, so I'm going to go and run him a little bit quicker. This engine also runs pretty well, though I had problems with this one too. I've recently tested this because I thought this would be a disaster, and it hasn't been either. So I'm very impressed with these. I'm much happier with these engines, obviously, than what it was before. Which, of course, who wouldn't be impressed? Because then nothing was staying on the tracks. These are very easily staying on the tracks. Yeah, I mean, they're not the greatest at holding the rails, but they work well enough. We take this up the branch right now. Kind of cool. I have two trains coming in and out. Let's now back him off and stop him right about there ish. So I have to now get him into the main line. Pardon me, folks. I'm just going to throw that switch. Now throw the switch back again. Yes, that is electrically operated. It's one of the ones I have wired, but I can't. But at the current time, it's not functioning. As you can see right there, the passenger service now is good to switch back over. I can now get dropping that car off. I can now head back down. Advantage of DCC, you can run in opposite. You can run this in different directions on the same track. Well, I don't know what happened there. That's weird. That was weird. My system just had a weird freak out a little bit there. There she is, running down the main line. Let's go put her on the second. The sighting. There we go. Shut her down. I'm kind of impressed with this locomotive for the wrong reason. It can actually make it around the track without derailing. As far as I can tell, that seems to be a unique problem with the New Haven Railroad version of this particular model, as I've had that issue with both of my, or actually all three, pardon me, of my New Haven units that I've bought from Rapido. As for right now, they're all on their way back to Rapido to be repaired. Bottom line, if you're looking for a highly detailed model of an RS-11, this is pretty much the most detailed one out there. The quality control isn't perfect, parts do fall off on it, and it's a little bit of a prima donna on running issues. Also, another tip when buying one of these, I strongly recommend splurging and just picking up the DCC and Sound version. That is for the first gen. Please note the second gen Rapido is already announced. Pardon me, oops, didn't want to knock it off the track. The second gen that has been announced for this model is already been noted by Rapido to having a different way of getting the shell off. You'll have 3 screws apparently on both the front and the back, and then the shell itself will just lift straight up. None of this nonsense with messing with clips and prying things and damaging paint and losing a few years on your life trying to get the thing apart because of all the stress it puts you under. It'll be much more simplistic and much easier to deal with. And so that concludes this review. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you liked it, thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And as always, keep the metal side down.